Hello and welcome to the Fandom Zone. I am your host Ghost, and I am continuing my MCU rewatch journey, so I just rewatched Iron Man 2. Like the last two installments of the series, I used to watch this movie a lot as a kid, and I remembered liking it better than Iron Man. Mostly because it included new characters like War Machine, Black Widow. I thought the villain was more compelling, and this suit was amazing. However, upon a rewatch and after recently rewatching Iron Man, I didn't really like this movie as much as Iron Man. So, in this video, I wanted to share my thoughts on the things that I liked and the things that I didn't like. As I mentioned earlier, I think the introduction of new characters is done pretty well and does a good job of starting to establish a foundation with its world building. Black Widow's role in this movie, I think, does an adequate job of establishing who she is. She's formidable, manipulative, a great spy, and just might be there for you when you need her to. Her trustworthiness is untrustworthy, and I really think that comes across in the film. Also, introducing Nick Fury into this movie to tease the Avengers and having a connection to Howard Stark, I think is a great way to subtly build this world into the story of this movie. Having it revealed to Tony that Fury not only knew his father, but his father was a founding member of S.H.I.E.L.D., this mysterious organization that's trying to keep a tighter leash on Tony, helps connect the story together. Then, from the help of his father, having a breakthrough with his arc reactor poisoning problem creates a new element that brings Tony back to his old self. However, I think there is just a bit too much of S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff in the movie. Actually, the director, Jon Favreau, butted heads a lot with the Marvel higher-ups during the making of this movie, to the point where they had to rewrite the script while they were filming to include more things to establish a connected universe. Overall, I think this movie does a great job at world building, setting the breadcrumbs without forcing it down viewers' throats. This movie doesn't hold your hand by stopping the movie and explaining every reference for what's to come, which is something that I can appreciate. Keep mentioning New Mexico without telling us what's there. Less is more. I think Sam Rockwell as Justin Hammer is great. He might be my favorite part of this movie. I love his attitude, I love his dancing, and I think he is someone who really fits well into a movie like this. The natural feeling dialogue works perfectly with his character. I think he's used as a great foil against Tony. He's sort of a dark reflection of Tony. He's pretty much Tony Stark, but half of the charm and none of the glamour of being Tony Stark. He kind of seems like he has the ego of Stark, but no one else sees him in that way. I love how they show this based on all of his interactions. Like in his first appearance at the Senate meeting, he makes an entrance with the confidence of a man who believes that he has the room eating out of the palm of his hand, but then is quickly humiliated by Tony. Or when he's being interviewed by the reporter from the first movie, who is clearly more interested in Tony.
Spread on Tony last year.
And she wrote a story as well.
Hammer is constantly being interrupted and talked over in the scene. He's the only one who cares about this interview until it eventually starts to go south. However, Hammer is shown to be somewhat resourceful as he has the means to break Vanko out of prison, but then ultimately gets played by him in the end. I really wish Marvel would have brought back Hammer again because I think he's the best foil for Iron Man out of any of these movies, and with Tony canonically dead, I think that's pretty unlikely that they'll bring him back.
Real soon.
I know they brought him back for an episode of What If, but I can't really remember if that episode was good or not. The only thing I could see Sam Rockwell reprising his role in live action is in the Ironheart series, which I don't think is a good idea because Hammer's connection to Tony is what's compelling. I don't want to see Spider-Man Iron Boy Jr. situation with Ironheart. Anyway, since Tony stopped selling weapons to the US government, Hammer stepped in to scoop up that contract, but his stuff isn't as good as Tony's, so he teams up with Ivan Vanko to help him get a leg up on Tony. Speaking of Vanko, I really like the direction that Mickey Rourke took this character in. Definitely one of the more eccentric MCU villains. Apparently he wanted half the scenes in Russian, which I'm not sure if that actually happened or not because I feel like he doesn't have many lines in this movie, but he also paid for his gold teeth and the birds with his own personal money. This character seems to be a blend of two Iron Man villains, Whiplash and Crimson Dynamo. I think most people would agree that Iron Man doesn't have the most memorable rogues gallery, and some of them could be hard to translate into film, especially at this time. So I don't really mind the combining of the characters for the sake of the story. Even though this is the third movie in a row where the final boss is just an evil clone of the hero, I think this character works for the most part. There's quite a bit of screen time dedicated to showing Vanko's motivation and him planning out his revenge against Tony Stark. However, I don't think it all comes together in the end. Between the lack of dialogue and the short, underwhelming finale where Iron Man and War Machine quickly defeat him, I don't think it carries as much weight as it should have. As mentioned earlier, for as much as he's on screen, Vanko doesn't actually have that many lines. I think this aspect works at times in this movie, especially since it helps add some much needed levity due to the quieter nature of most of his scenes. I like the juxtaposition of the quiet, calculated Vanko versus the chaotic mess that Tony is in this movie. I wish we got some more scenes with Tony and Banco talking about their father's legacies, how two different families were affected by arc reactor technology, and how their beliefs and decisions impacted their lives and shaped who they are today. I think that would have added much more of an emotional payoff in the finale. But bringing it back to the things I liked, the racetrack scene is incredible and might be one of the best MCU moments of all time. The spectacle of Vanko slicing up these supercars in slow motion is amazing. I've said it in the last two MCU videos, but I need to say it again. This movie also looks amazing due to the fact that they, again, shot on film and in real locations. This also has maybe the best Iron Man suit up scene, with arguably the best Iron Man suit in the MCU. This is just peak. I love this suit. I love this fight. I love how he's initially caught off guard because, well, he's drunk and he was so confident that no one was even close to this technology that he could very well have died if not for Happy Hogan. I like the idea that Banco doesn't necessarily want to kill Tony at that moment. His main goal is just to embarrass him and to attack his ego by showing the world that he's not the only one who can be dangerous with arc reactor technology. And this line about making God bleed is so tough.
My father is the reason you're alive.
The reason I'm alive is because you had a shot, you took it, you missed.
Did I? If you can make God bleed, then people will cease to believe in him. And there will be blood in the water, and the sharks will come.
Okay, now on to some of the things that I didn't like. The dynamic between Tony and Pepper is completely different in this movie. Every interaction has become confrontational and argumentative, large part due to Tony's chaotic behavior. I just felt very tense and anxious anytime they were on screen talking to each other. Like, I could not sit still during this scene, which I think is intentional to demonstrate how chaotic Tony's behavior is. In the first movie, their banter was more playful and genuine, so when they kiss at the end of this movie, it just doesn't feel as earned to me. In my last Iron Man video, I talked about how I thought the chemistry and banter between Tony and Pepper felt so real and genuine. In this movie, you can still feel that they've known each other for a long time, but they just kind of hate each other now. I also feel like Tony kind of regressed as a character from the last movie. In the first movie, Tony learns that he is hurting people and actively chooses to stop and help people instead. In this movie, he's just pretty much a drunk who is just causing chaos to everyone around him. The size of his ego is on full display in this movie, which comes back to bite him multiple times. A lot of this movie is just Tony exhibiting self-destructive behavior, which creates rifts between the people closest to him. Pepper and Rhodey are constantly doing damage control for him and really seem to be sick of his BS. As soon as they start to get things under control, Tony does something else that makes international news. So with that said, it kind of feels like Tony doesn't have any friends in this movie. He's so isolated, but it's his own fault. He doesn't open up to them to explain what he's going through, why he's acting this way, and the only person who he alludes that something is wrong to is a spy. I know they tried to adapt the Demon in a Bottle storyline from the comics, which is about Tony's alcohol addiction. I've never read that original storyline, so I'm not sure how faithful this adaptation is. If you've read it, let me know in the comments below what you thought of this adaptation and if it's something that you would recommend reading. However, from my understanding, his addiction in the comics isn't related to arc reactor technology killing him, but it's more of the standard psychological addiction that most addicts struggle with. I think exploring that relationship between Tony and his addiction could have added another layer of sincerity to this movie, taking the comic book genre in an even more mature direction. I think seeing this would have also given more opportunities for Pepper's character, as she could have been someone to help Tony through this and be an emotional anchor to him. They could have expanded on the depth of their relationship from the first movie. Instead, in this movie, Pepper is a lot more cold and direct with Tony now that she is running his company and is more of an equal to him. And yeah, I get that she has to be because he's insane, but the charm of the will they, won't they dynamic from the first movie is non existent in this one, which is a shame. I think this movie is all the worse for not expanding more into the relationship of Tony and Pepper. After the forced rooftop kiss, I'm definitely curious to see how the relationship is portrayed after this. I guess we'll see in Avengers. Also, Elon Musk is in this, playing himself.
Those Merlin engines are fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, good idea for an electric jet.
A lot of people would say he's the real life Tony Stark, and that's only true in the sense that he's a billionaire and a terrible person. Overall, I think the humor lands pretty well in this movie. I think there are some great action scenes. Love the semi-organic world building. I like some of the story elements and characterizations while also not liking other story elements and characterizations. They changed Tony and Pepper and introduced Widow, Fury, Hammer, Vanko, and adapting the Demon in the Bottle storyline. Tony discovers and invents a new element from his dead father, and just a lot is happening in this movie, and I don't think it all comes together in the end the best way that it could have. With all that said, I definitely like this movie more than I don't, and it's not as good as I remembered, but notice things that I never did before after this rewatch, and I still enjoy this movie. If you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching, and let me know your thoughts on Iron Man 2 or any of the MCU in general in the comments below. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving this video a like. I am a new small channel, so a like goes a long way for me. And if you want to join me on my MCU rewatch journey, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss my next video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.